the first labor union for NCAA athletes. All 15 members of the Dartmouth men's basketball team signed a petition in September asking to join the local 560. Remember, we talked about that story when it happened. Okay, a few things here to keep in mind. One, we saw this with Northwestern football back in 2015. That was pre-NIL era. That was pre the NCAA losing some of these big court cases across the country. The thing with that is Northwestern was the only private school in the Big Ten. So the National Labor Relations Board decided not to act because all of the other schools within the conference were public schools. Here, Dartmouth is an Ivy League school. All of these institutions are private. And keep in mind, no scholarships are given in the Ivy League. So these basketball players are paying tuition. They're paying for this experience to go to Dartmouth and play basketball, but now want to be considered employees. Now, there's a lot of people around the country who are pro player compensation. Like, I think all of us want athletes to be able to share in revenue who see this as a win. I don't necessarily see it that way, just for the factual, case of the matter here is that if you're paying to go to the school, you're not by definition an employee. What do you think?
Look, this is something that we've talked about. Will they be considered employees? Will they unionize? You tweeted out something I thought yesterday that was very smart. It's like, it's going to be sad when Dartmouth basketball gets canceled because they don't make any money.
Yeah.
Like, you want to get paid. Well, we talk about this in the real world, right? You're going to get paid most of the time what your value is and what you're bringing, right? Are you making a profit? Why are we seeing college football go to this new governing body with the SEC and the Big Ten, which we're going to talk about with Tim Brando? Well, they need to turn into a even more for-profit, situation. What I don't understand here, and you've talked about this too, David, is so if you're a scholarship athlete, take Dartmouth out of it, right? Of course, the Ivy League would start this and try and screw everything up. It's just what they do. It's amazing. It's the collection of the dumbest smart people of all time, outside of the NCAA. But what happens if you're on scholarship? Do you now still get your school paid for if there's a rev share? Like, if you go to Mississippi State and you're the TV deal, you're a football player, and school's getting $60 million, whatever it is, and you get a share of that. Now, does your room and board get paid for?
Or your food?
Your travel? Or your scholarship? Because to me, if you're an employee of the school and you're getting paid by the school, your ass ain't on scholarship too.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So again, I'll say the same thing about these NIL contracts. At some point, they've got to be two-sided. At some point, the player's got to have some sort of mandate where they got to stay there a certain amount of time, or they have to pay the money back, or it's a breach of contract. Well, with this, if you're a scholarship guy and you want to get paid a rev share, you want to be employees, okay. There's two sides of business. You get a salary, that scholarship's gone. I think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, so Blaine, that's what I was alluding to when I tweeted, like, it's going to be a shame when the Dartmouth men's basketball team no longer exists and you've lost this opportunity because it operates at a financial loss, right? Now, the two likely outcomes of this are either one, Dartmouth just says, hey, let's be a leader in this space and let's use our endowment from donations that we get and just continue to allow the men's basketball team to operate at a financial loss like they have been doing. They lose a couple $100,000 every year. And we'll just call the kids employees, and there's not going to be any difference.
WNBA.
Or what the students are saying is, or the student athletes are saying is, well, we don't want to be told what to do and when to do it. You dictating what time we have to be where and practice and show up to this game is by definition you being our employer, which as someone who owned a business, the distinction between employee and independent contractor is real one. It is a legal definition. But in this sense, if you go that route, you're nothing more than an intramural team.
No, you're basically a rec team.
Yeah.
That's basically what you are. And we saw this coming. You saw this coming a while ago with that get off my lawn. At some point, this was going to happen. Of course, it was Dartmouth, but they will do exactly what you just said. They'll bring whatever donations to pay for this basketball team who hasn't done anything for years. So at this point, does school even matter anymore?
Well,
look, this is what it is. School, education does not matter to these guys.
Well, at what point, and I'm going to be honest with you, we saw this with some pretty high-level college basketball teams. Guys just weren't going to class.
Sure.
They just show up and not play. So I'm telling you, the term student-athlete may get retired here soon. It really may get, because what's going to stop me from just not going to class?
Yeah.
I'm an employee. Y'all pay me to play football. Y'all pay me to play basketball. Y'all don't pay me to go to chemistry class. Like, will there be and if the NCAA is gone, What is this new governing body going to be like? Well, you better maintain a 2.5 GPA or you're ineligible.
But
like
a case could be made now that just a non-athlete student, just a regular student at a university, is also an employee because they're dictated what time they have to go to class, where that class is going to be, the curriculum, the student handbook.
I disagree with you there because they're not doing anything extra outside of just being a student.
Again, they're being told, like when they go take the class, what room that class is in. They're given a handbook that they have to sign. Look, of course, I'm just taking this as far. I'm not even taking this as far as an attorney's going to take it when they get into the classroom. Like those are the type of things that are going to come up when we start arguing over the semantics and the vocabulary of, well, what technically is an employee? Now it's different at Alabama football or Duke basketball.
Yeah.
Those places are driving profit and driving revenue. But the Dartmouth kids are saying, we don't care if the basketball team turns a profit. All we care is, does it bring in any revenue whatsoever? And you get to tell us what time to be here to practice.
This is probably a pipe dream, but is there a world in which you only get a rev share or you're only considered an employee or you can only unionize if your sport is for profit? If you make money, you can't slice it like that.
Well, that's life. Like, here's what it says in the article. Unionizing would allow the Dartmouth basketball players to negotiate not only over salary, but working conditions, including practice hours and travel. Well, to your point, negotiate over salary. Like, let's play this out. Let's just say, okay, you're employees now. You're labeled employees. What right do they now have that they didn't have before? All 15 players could have gone into the coach's office and said, we're not playing unless you pay us each $300,000 for our NIL. And the coach would have laughed at him. We don't have the money and we're not getting it out of our donations to pay you. You're not making a profit. You're not doing anything. And then they go on to the next one. Okay, well, we want, let's say, free health care. And then they can negotiate over that. You could have already done that. I watched Rudy when all the guys went in there and put their jerseys and said, all of us are going to collectivize and not play unless you let Rudy play and dress for the game. You already had that leverage. So now you're being called employees. I don't understand what you're going to get out of it. Now, again, North Carolina basketball, that's different. Duke basketball, Kansas basketball, this is a whole different situation in the Ivy League to me.
Man, just wild. We're going to keep our eye on it, see how it goes. It's going to get appealed. But, I mean, I don't see the athletes losing a court case. I don't see them getting ruled against in the society we live in.
Yeah.
Like, they're just going to be, oh, no, well, it's persecution. You know, you got a bunch of different people, white people, black people, all this stuff. It's persecution of the athlete. It's, again, at some point, it's got to be balanced out, man.
It seems like student athletes were moving towards a model, at least with some college football teams and some college basketball teams that drive a profit, where the athletes can not only profit off of their name, image, and likeness, but can also possibly participate in the revenue sharing, which I think if implemented correctly could be a great thing for college athletes. But for the programs that don't drive a profit, if we're moving towards a model where college athletes are employees, are we going to see more and more of these sports programs go by the wayside and be eliminated if they don't make a profit? Like Dartmouth basketball, for instance.
We'll see some things eliminated. Yeah. The issue with this in terms of, I think this is actually big picture good news because it's going to help Sankey and Petiti drive home to everyone involved in college football Division I that the separation from the NCAA has got to take place and that revenue share has got to take place. And they can implement these things and do them without a problem. It's a much bigger issue for the NCAA. Why? Because outside of football and basketball at these major institutions, just about every sports team is operating at a loss. All right. So the NCAA has one thing and one thing only that it can count on to finance these non-revenue producing sports championships, and that's the men's NCAA basketball championship. Again, you can underline men's because the women's does not show the same kind of profit that the men's does, although they just got a big financial hit in their new deal with ESPN. But the reality is the NCAA, that's the body that's in trouble because they do house all of these different sports. Look, collective bargaining is part of what's going to transpire here. Now, I know that shocks you maybe, and it shocks people of my generation and older. But we're in this position because of what? The negligence of the National Collegiate Athletic Association. They did not keep up with the times. This is the price that you pay. As for the lawsuit, I think the ramifications of it are big, and they'll echo throughout the remainder of this year moving forward. And it could spell trouble for, the soccer teams and the volleyball teams that are out there, although volleyball is doing really well for the women, as you know. But listen, it's now a business. We all know it's now a business. And if you don't have enough to compete, then you cannot compete. And this streamlining that needed to take place, in my opinion, in the first place. Ohio State's going to have to take a long look at having 36 different teams, even at Ohio State, as big a program as that is, with all of the revenue that it generates. That's a lot. Schools that have already pared down the number of sports that they have done so, I think, with heavy hearts, but understanding what the future holds, David. And so, yeah, there are going to be some tough decisions that are made out there, no doubt about it.
No, look, I always say let the free market decide. So if the girls' golf team or if the men's volleyball team or whatever isn't driving a profit, then, I understand that going by the wayside.
Women's sports are screwed then.
It's just tough for me because that was part of my collegiate experience, right? Like being best friends with the baseball players and the water polo players and all that kind of stuff. So it's just going to be ironic to me when the Dartmouth men's basketball team gets what they want and they're called employees and they go into the coach's office and then they say, hey, now we want a salary, and they say, well, no, we're not going to take the endowment from our donors and give it to you. We're going to invest it elsewhere, and now there's no basketball program.
You just said one thing that's a lightning rod statement, okay? When I did this, okay? I got news for you, David. When you or I or anybody else did something, this is a new time, okay? And
it's going to be unfortunate.
During that period of time, a lot of things were going on and mismanagement was taking place. It wasn't necessarily by those athletes that were playing those sports. It was by those athletic departments that were wasting revenue over and over and over again. How many fired coaches? Do we need to go over how much dead money was out there that schools had spent on those coaches, and they hang around, they get an office, right? And I mean, I'm not talking about the football coaches that were paid by boosters. I'm talking about how many senior associate athletic directors can you possibly have on your staff after you fired said coach? It was going on ad nauseum throughout the country. And, everybody's got to shape up or understand that they're going to ship out. Listen, I understand why the media, so much of it, wants to look down its nose in a condescending way when the games are not being played and say, oh, my God, it's the end of the world as we know it. I'm sorry. Much of what they're complaining about, and even to your point about the way you remember it as a player yourself, those Michigan fans didn't know any of those guys or those ladies that you're talking about. They didn't care about any of them. So it doesn't affect them. Okay. So the way it used to be, back when I played, which is usually code for your Brando's age or older. Okay. You got to forget that. I'm glad, David, you're an old soul and you feel that way. But listen, this is just the grim reality of life today. Dollars aren't spending the way they once did. And that's true in life, and it's true in intercollegiate athletics.
YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for stopping by. Make sure you hit that like button. Turn those notifications on as well. We'd really appreciate it.